Welcome to The Current Situation, your South Carolina political pulse. I'm your host, Joshua Gale, alongside South Carolina State House Representative Jordan Pace. Every episode, our goal is to help you navigate the complex world of politics through a biblically conservative perspective. Jordan, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing well. How are you, Josh?
Good. This evening, we have a guest with us. His name is Pieter Keyter. Pieter is an extremely successful farmer. He's got a great book that's available wherever you purchase books. I found this one on Amazon, A Farmer's Redemption, Overcoming Famine by Faith by Pieter and Blanche Keyter. Pieter, we've had been so fortunate to be able to get to know you and your wife and your family, your beautiful family. Just have been so moved by your obedience. How you hear from God, how you know you followed God to come over here to the United States to share the gospel, and you guys have impacted thousands and thousands of people, and it is just a pleasure to know you, and is everyone who knows you is blessed by it. So welcome to the Current Situation podcast.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So the reason I wanted to have you on, not just to promote your book, which is incredible, by the way, cannot put it down. There are so many incredible testimonies in this book that will just not only like entertain you, but also show you like the goodness of God over and over and over and over again. And then as you're reading something, you're like, holy cow. And then, but God. And it's incredible to see that, and it's incredible for you to document what God's done in your life, and it's such an incredible story. But I want to share some of what you've learned coming out of South Africa over here to the United States, and just share a heat of warning to the people here in the United States of what you've seen in the past and how you see traces of that here in the United States, that the same political playbook that's at play in South Africa is not very different from what we're seeing here in the United States. South Africa has seen influence from the United States, and South Africa is kind of in a fast-forwarded position on the other side of letting government take full control of all these things that we've taken for granted. And when that has happened, we're in a very, very terrible place. So kind of give us some perspective of what that looks like.
Well, for me, growing up in South Africa, things have changed a lot in the last 30 years with the new government moving into South Africa. And at the beginning, we had really good change. There was a lot of things that had to be sorted out. But as time progresses, we got leaders in place that was not good for our nation. And they were more after getting money than, really looking out for the people. And that got our country in a bad spot. I mean, they got deals with nations that they should not be dealing with. And that's the thing in Africa. There's a lot of nations from China and Russia that's involved in our nations that's corrupting the government. I believe they get side deals on the side where they get money from, and so they will change the things in the nation towards those nations and turn away from the nations that they've been dealing with for a long time. But in our nation, in overall, things that just escalated was crime. I mean, crime is just getting out of hand. It was never like that. I mean, if I look at the US today, where I'm at, the kids can still walk in the parks. You have, I went to that bridge in Charleston, and there was like 9 o'clock at night. There was kids probably 8, 9 years old on their little bicycles on the road. And I was looking at that, and I thought to myself, you will not do that in South Africa. We changed to the 5th most dangerous nation in the world. So many things have changed, and I can see the resemblance at what's happening in the US. It's turning towards that point. At the beginning, we thought with the new government and borders that's open, you just heard of isolated incidents north where migrants came in and crime escalated. And 30 years ago, we thought, it's only in that town or it's only in that city. But after 30 years, it was like, if I can give it that name, like cancer, it was just spreading. And it's like almost impossible to get that out of your system now, because we allow people in that we should not allow in.
Absolutely. So you've seen that. You've seen, I think there was a point where the United States gave South Africa billions for a green energy deal. And then how'd that turn out?
Yeah, I've seen. You can Google it. Probably you'll see. President Biden has agreed, or that they. I think it was $8 billion that was given to South Africa to turn to green energy. And over what happened is they took the money. That green energy never was applied to the people or installed. And there is some, but I mean it's not sufficient enough. And so they had agreements with the U.S. government that they should stop some of the coal plants. And for a long time, I think it's for 14 years now, we started to have power grid failures. But the last 3 4 years we had like 10 hours without electricity, 12 hours without electricity, and normally it's in the daytime. So that was hitting the businesses really hard, because if your electricity is out from 8 till, so they will put it in time slots, like 4 hour time slots, 3 hour time slots. So they'll shut you down from 8, let's say, till 10 or till 11, and then you'll have 2 hours of electricity, and then they'll shut you down again. I mean, how can you operate in business doing it like that? And when you get to certain businesses like a bakery, I mean, they work with ovens that needs to run. You cannot just run 2 hours and then you shut them down. I mean, they're in the middle of the process of baking bread. So it hit our economy really hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks might not realize it, but the Biden administration, and it was I think it was 8.5 billion in 2021 that they sent to South Africa. They've pushed this out into the states, like the United States as well, the federal government down into the states, both with monetary, essentially bribes, but also by regulation. They've strangled these coal plants and try to shut them down, and try to successfully restricted mining of coal, which the United States has probably more coal than any other country in the world. Um, so for the express purpose, just like in South Africa, to shut down the coal plants. And
Yeah.
it's put South Carolina in a very difficult position. Not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before that, it got very cold. And Duke Power in the upstate, they had rolling brownouts. Santee Cooper down here in the low country was a hair's breadth away from having to have rolling blackouts too, because they didn't have enough power. And the state, we've been trying to build or authorize the building of a new gas power plant, but it's the kind of the green extremist people that are obsessed with, like, well, we can only have solar panels and stuff, that have stalled it and try to shut it down. And we have deeper issues, like the state basically runs monopolies on these power plants, but that's a deeper issue. So we're not too far away from what you're describing here in South Carolina, from what's happening in South Africa.
You see what happens in South Africa as well with the power. If you have like solar, you have to get security to protect those solar panels, because they will steal those panels for there's metal inside. So it's so little that they can get out of that panel, but they will sell it, because if there's no food, if there's poverty, people take anything. So it's like a snowball effect. The one thing goes to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And like I said, with the people coming across the borders, the problem you have with that is they're not documented. A lot of the really high crimes like killings and rapings is people coming across the border, because you don't have their fingerprint, you don't have any facial identification, you have no address where you can get a hold of these people. So it's really horrible. I mean, for me on the farm where I lived in South Africa, I had a 8-foot electric fence around my house. On that 8-foot electric fence, I had an alarm system on that, and I had cameras on that. And then outside my house, I had beams, that alarm system beams, that if you break that beams, it will tell me. I had cameras outside my house. I had 2 German Shepherds. I had on the farm, I had 2 towers that was 60 feet high with PTZ cameras that can zoom almost 10 miles. You will not identify a person on 10 miles, but you can see, the landscape if there's vehicles on your property. So we had that, and we had cameras on the poles that will read number plates of people passing by on the highways, so that we can see, is this vehicle stolen? Each room in my house had a panic button, so I had to teach my kids from very young, if we're ever under a farm attack, you need to get to that panic button and press that. If one of us can make it to the panic button, it will immediately notify my neighbors and the security people, private security people that we had to pay for to help us and to protect us. I mean, it was extremely difficult to tell an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old, there's the panic button, we need to do that. That's not things that you should train kids
No.
to stay alive. And it's reality in South Africa. I mean, you don't see a lot of that in the news and in the media. I think we all know media has been manipulated all over the world. People will make you see what they want you to see, and the rest is just put away. But yeah, that's the challenges we have in South Africa.
Yeah. One of my favorite verses, the John 10:10, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come so that they may have life and life to the fullest. A thief, nothing happened. A thief doesn't say, hey, I'm here. It is a very slow, thought out, sneaky spend. There's just so many different ways to steal your identity, to steal all sorts of things, to commit fraud, all these things. So what did that look like? It wasn't overnight. I mean, you're a very smart person, and you're as strong as an ox, working out on the farm every day. But it wasn't something that happened overnight where someone said, hey, we're going to come take everything from you, and we're going to subject your family to famine. We're going to subject your family to crime. We're going to subject your family to all these different things. It didn't happen overnight. It was a promise with a lot of spin. Hey, something tragic here happened in South Africa. We're going to then feed off of that for a very, very, very long time to make you remember and to give you, shame and anxiety of the past, so that we can use fear to manipulate the future. So using that, what did that process look like, where it was just a little spin here and corruption and bankruptcy and GDP failure? What did it look like?
If I can say, over time, like you said, a lot of promises. The first thing the government promised the people was everybody's going to get a house, and they will have free schooling, they will have free medical, they will have free universities. And if you run a business and the GDP of a nation, it's impossible to give people that. But the moment you start promising people stuff, you get them to vote for you. But in reality, everybody that runs a business knows over the long term, somebody's going to pay for that. So that's how they pulled in a lot of votes, by promising people a lot of promises that has never happened, because there's not money for that. And at the beginning, when the country was still in good shape financially wise, the infrastructure was good. So for many years, they stopped using the income that they get government to sustain the infrastructure, because our government, I think it's tripled in size from the original government, the amount of people in government. You just
Right.
have so many people. And so everybody's got a big salary, and it's like a lot of times it's family making a way for family in government. And so your whole government hub is too big, and it's that's taking a lot of the income out of the nation. And over time, it just, as the money get less and less and less, you can just see it all over our nation. The roads are, as a farmer, we're about 40 miles away from the town. So all the farmers, we have graders that we grade our own roads to town. We pay the tax, but we don't have roads to drive our trucks to town. We have to buy our own graders to do that. We have to get our own trucks loaded with gravel and fix our own roads. Otherwise, we will not have a road to get to the town. So that's over time, and it did not start like that. But over time, as government was using money in the wrong place, we have troops in the DRC. Now, tell me, why do we need to send all that money to the DRC, paying for troops in the DRC, if our own nation is falling apart? We have no
And
business there. Why do we
for
send
folks who
people
don't
there?
know, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is to the north of South Africa, pretty
Yes,
significant distance. Yeah, pretty far away.
yes. So we're doing things outside of the nation that's taking money from our nation, but our own people don't have roads to drive on. So why would we
Yeah,
want spend that money on other nations? That doesn't add up.
Right.
I'm
So the
always
snow
thinking,
Right. So the snowball effect is in place. We're continuing to send money where it doesn't belong. We're beginning to make empty promises and to try things that sound good to earn votes, but really bankrupting a nation and making the people pay for it, the hardworking people pay for it. There's no sustainability to it, and to jump in with both feet into something with no infrastructure, this is what you get. This all sounds extremely familiar.
it does.
And there's a heat of warning if you can see it here. Why don't you see these things in the media? If we care about every nation on the planet and we care about people as much as we say we do, you will not see these things reported on in the media. You will not see these things because there's no good spin to it.
It doesn't fit their narrative, right?
It does not fit the narrative.
Peter, like you were saying, the media is going to kind of report what they want to report because they have an agenda, and these kind of stories don't fit their agenda.
the biggest challenge that I see in the U.S. is the U.S. tried to be so politically correct,
Mm-hmm.
and they're letting so many things slide that I cannot understand from a person from the outside looking in. I can point out a few things that I see in the media. A few months back, you had those two police officers that was attacked in New York by illegal people that came into the nation. And I think it was a day later or 2 days later, they were out free.
Yeah.
So for me, the question that I have as a person sitting from the outside, remember, I cannot vote in this nation, so I cannot benefit whichever way it goes. It's not, I cannot choose between blue and red. I'm not in the voting position in the US. So when I say this, is I'm looking at what I see is happening, and you as an American citizen don't have that same privileges. If you hit and kick a police officer, they'll send you to jail. So how can somebody that's here illegal get away with that? So that's challenges that you have to deal with, and you cannot be political correct and keep everybody happy on that. You need to deal with this, and the sooner the better. If you don't deal with this, your kids is going to deal with this, and it's going to look 10 times worse than now. And so for me, it's you need to deal with it now.
Absolutely. So Sunday was a historic time in South Africa. It was a voting in South Africa with the different political parties, and obviously, you've said that the government has gotten bigger than it ever has been before, and more government obviously is another warning. The more you give to government, and the more you allow the government, and the more power you give to the government, the less that you have. So you had elections on Sunday, and for the first time in decades, the main political party had received the worst vote, in decades, as a part of people just being what?
They're fed up with all the lies and the promises. It's been happening for 30 years. The thing is, by now we're so fragile and broken. To start rebuilding that nation is going to take a long time. I mean, you have to catch up with the infrastructure. We've got 60 million people. I think they estimate there's between 5 and 7 million illegal people in our nation. That's just close to 10% of the people that's illegal. So you have to keep up with the infrastructure, supplying everybody with electricity. So to get back to where we were is going to take us a very long time. Even if we stop all the mismanagements of funds today, just to rebuild the infrastructure. And that's the thing is, people don't understand that. But when you get to that point, it's going to be hard on a nation to rebuild and start getting that people back their jobs, people getting back hospitals that works. I mean, people are dying in hospitals because there's no doctors, there's no medicine. We used to have clinics that will do, they'll take their clinic vans to the farming community. For many years, we don't have that. So the people in rural areas have no medical support, nothing, because it stopped. And to
Yeah.
bring all that back, it's just going to take a long time.
So for basically since what 1993, the government of South Africa has been run by the ANC, the African National Congress. Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And
So
then we had President Nelson Mandela, and he was kind of he was a good guy to have for that season. The next president we had was President Thabo Mbeki. He was well educated. He studied in Europe somewhere. I cannot remember where at, but he was well educated, and the country was running really well underneath him. But then when we got to the next president, Jacob Zuma, I think he got like grade 2 or grade 4. He finished grade 2 or grade 4 in school, but
wow.
he was never really the guy in the in the forefront. He was just a pawn that they used to start stealing from the country. And you can read on Google, when you look at that, he was on so many trials and of looting $3 trillion, and there were so many things that but they always had like a way to say no, they did it that way around. So it was really difficult. At the end, they had him on something, and he had to be sentenced to jail, and he was in jail for probably 3 weeks, and they released him again. And now he started one of the political parties that's being there for the first time. I think he got 15% of the vote.
Wow.
And that's a guy you don't want to connect with the ANC again, because he never had the thing for the people. It's just for him and his family.
Right.
Mm.
So because the ANC did not get, this is the first time they didn't get a majority in parliament, they're
Yes.
going to have to team up with somebody. So it's either going to be the MK, which is Zuma's party, the EFF, which is probably worse.
You see, that's Julius Malema, and he doesn't make he's not quite about, he will sing on stage that song that they have, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer.
Oh, wow.
So he's really out there to, he will say the Europeans needs to go back to Europe. But at the end, that will mean failure in South Africa, because we can look at what happened in Zimbabwe when they chased all the farmers out.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe used to be called the breadbasket of Africa.
Mhm.
And now 70% of Zimbabweans are living in South Africa because there's no work, there's no food in their nation. And one corrupt leader sold a lie to the people that you don't need the Europeans, and they chased them out of their nation. And at the end, the nation is paying an extremely heavy price for that.
Right. So, I've heard so many parallels for what we could be facing here, not only in the United States, but particularly in South Carolina. Whether it be roads, like here in Berkeley County, where I live, the county has to, like here locally, we have to pay to fix the state roads because the state doesn't govern the roads well enough and prioritize. Sounds very similar to what y'all had to deal with. Basically, we're starting to look toward government to fix all our problems, which that's what happened in Zimbabwe. Seems to be what's happening in South Africa. What could we do differently here to avoid heading in those bad directions?
Well, if I can say, I don't know how all your rules and laws works in the US. One of the things is you need to enforce the border security, get people documented that comes into this nation. If you start out illegal, that's never a good foundation.
No.
If you come in here illegal, the foundation that you start off is the wrong foundation. When I came to the States on a religious visa, I think that visa cost me $11,000. It was really expensive.
Wow.
So you need to enforce the borders to get the wrong people out of this nation. I've seen, and I don't know all the videos that circulates on social media, but I've seen one of a guy that came through the border, and they had an interview with him, and they asked him, what's your name? And he says it doesn't matter. And then he said another thing. He said, but the US will soon know who I am. And I'm thinking, what's this man doing in your nation? Why is he crossing the border into your nation? You can definitely see in his attitude, he's not for this nation. So there should be definitely control on your borders. I don't know how the financial system works in the US in government, but I believe that when you have money in South Carolina, that the money should kind of stay in South Carolina, and a certain percentage should go maybe to your federal government. But the moment you move all the money out of state and you have somebody that's sitting somewhere in the US, they don't understand the state. They don't understand the needs of the state. They don't understand the people in the state. And they're using the money for what? So that's just a thought. Like I said, I have no idea how it works in the US. Do you pay all your taxes and it goes to a certain area and it's not in South Carolina? So I think each state
Yeah.
should have more control over the money that's being produced
Yeah.
by taxes in your state.
I agree
If
with
that
that.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Here's why this podcast exists as well. There's so much spin on who is who. You know, you'll get a piece of mail saying, "Hey, I am pro borders. Hey, I am pro this. I am pro this. I am pro this." They're speaking to the issues that they know that people somewhat care about. The emotional catalyst, they know that they'll make people have a decision, and they're hoping that you do not do your due diligence and understand who exactly this person is. This person is not pro Second Amendment. This person is not extremely pro-life. This person does not vote as a conservative. But they know how to look. They're great actors and actresses. And that's what the issue is, that if we do not smell what stinks and call it for what it is, the garbage that it is, we will end up in a place that we do not want to be. So, you see, political parties combining forces in South Africa. The Post and Courier released an article that says that voters in South Carolina have opportunities in 32 different elections to put a hard damper on the South Carolina Freedom Caucus. The South Carolina Freedom Caucus is known as the most conservative caucus in South Carolina. And I'm looking at the men and women in the Freedom Caucus that vote so conservatively, it bothers the people that are in the wolves in sheep's clothing, the people who are Republican in name only. So the paper, the Post and Courier, which is a very left-leaning newspaper, to say that the Republican caucus are the good guys. Whenever the left-leaning newspaper calls the Republicans the good guys, you know that there's something wrong. When they say that the Freedom Caucus, the most conservative caucus, is that they're social media mongers. They love social media points and attention, things like that. When you're the target of a leftist newspaper, you know that you're doing something right. So what we're wanting in South Carolina is for people to wake up and smell the coffee and understand and cut through the spin that just because people say one thing and say they're about something is not exactly who they are, and it's not just the foundation that they stand on. So Jordan, I'm going to let you speak into that some more, but you'll have you're trying to bring independent voters and Democratic voters over into a Republican primary to influence an election. So, Jordan, I'll let you speak into that, being a member of South Carolina's Freedom Caucus.
Sure. Yeah, we don't have what closed primaries in South Carolina. So essentially, anybody can vote in any party primary that they want to. Even if you're a registered Democrat, you can go vote in a Republican primary. That's crazy. It essentially guarantees the kind of crazy stuff that we've had in the past. One of my hopes is, and one of the priorities of the Freedom Caucus, is to close the primaries. To kind of put it in South Africa speak, that would be like letting the Democrat Alliance vote to who they want to be an African National Congress parliamentarian. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So that's one side that we're dealing with. it's been attempted in the past, but it's been blocked typically by those politicians that have been there a long time and that campaign one way and vote another, and historically counted on Democrats to vote and support them in Republican primaries. So to me, that's got to be step one on how to like head in the right direction is to close these primaries. And it's a Republican Party platform issue. Like, it's in the Republican Party platform that we should do this, and it's been there for like 10 or 15 years and still hadn't happened. I am curious. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, Peter. What's the state of the church in general in South Africa? Kind of society's falling apart, the government's falling apart. How is the church looking as a whole during all of that?
Well, I can tell you the people are praying a lot more. They're getting together a lot more because God can help us through whatever we need to deal with. I think you can look it up. Uncle Angus Buchan had a prayer meeting in 2017, and we were over 1 million people that pitched for that prayer meeting. It was so amazing to see I think we were like 1.2 million people, but to see 1.2 million people getting down on their knees and asking God to help our nation, because we know we're in trouble and we need God to intervene in our nation. And I believe the U.S. needs God to intervene in this nation, because if I look at the trend in the U.S., a lot of leaders are not in line with God's word. And that should be a no-no, and we should vote against people like that, because at the end it will cost this nation. But in South Africa, the church is growing stronger, because in the Bible, it's like in the Bible, when the Israelites were out of line and they got punished, then they all start screaming and say, God, please help us. But we don't have to go there. We can change before we get to that place where we just push God away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
good word.
we conclude this episode, you've got to go on Amazon, get A Farmer's Redemption: Overcoming Famine by Faith by Pieter and Blanche Keyter. This book, I'm telling you, you will not be able to put it down. It is not a gigantic book, 140-ish pages for you to read in less than a week, but just it'll entertain you, and it will bring you closer to God, just and encourage your faith. Just to wait on God, just to allow God to move, to seek the Holy Spirit, to hear from God, to wait for God to move, and to watch God do what God does. He is good, and he can only be good. He moves in miracle signs and wonders. It's incredible to see those things in this, and to know the person who has seen God move over and over and over again, and has so much faith to move on to the other side of the planet to share the gospel, and to bring his family along with him. I commend you for that. You are such an incredible man of God, and I'm just so thankful to know you, and for others to get to know you through this book, and of course here around South Carolina. So thank you for joining us here on The Current Situation, Peter.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and we pray that God blesses you and your family and the efforts of your hands and all that God has called you to do here in the United States. So again, we're going to put that link to the book in the show notes. So go ahead and grab that link, hop on Amazon, add it to your cart, buy now, and get it delivered. I think I got mine in like next day shipping. It was highly available. Grab the book, and then pass it on, and just watch wildfire. When, there's healing for this nation. There's healing in the word of our testimonies. There's healing. We pass these things on, these stories of what God is doing. And I promise you won't be upset by this book. So thank you for joining into the Current Situation podcast. We are a week away from the South Carolina state Republican primaries. Early voting is open right now. Go vote. Do not waste your opportunity to vote. Historically, less than 10% of registered voters vote in the state South Carolina Republican primaries. Guys, that leaves everything up to chance. What will happen in these primaries, and we're a week away from the actual voting day, this depends on the next 2 to 4 years of government in the state of South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Guys, there's so much work that needs to be done, and there's so many people that are Republican in name only that need to be ousted from the state house in Columbia. We can do this. Wake up your neighbors. Wake up the church. Paul Revere all around your town, and find somebody to support. and figure out what you can do in these final hours. It's the final countdown. You've heard it here first on the Current Situation podcast. You've heard a warning here from Pieter Keyter. We want God to heal and to save this nation, and we've given you a little bit of insight into what it could be if we do not stand up as the church and unite ourselves and try to hear from God. So we look forward to speaking with you again next week here on the Current Situation.